What's going on, everybody? This is Steve from ThieAudio. Today we're going to talk about Monarch MKIV from ThieAudio. Now, if you've spent any time in the business IT world, you might have heard the phrase, no one ever got fired for buying IBM. Basically, IBM had a reputation for consistent quality and reliability in the IT space. If I were going to make a similar phrase up about IEMs, I might say, no one was ever disappointed when they bought ThieAudio. Simply put, ThieAudio has a reputation for great quality, great builds, and great technical performance across the board, from their more budget-friendly offerings like the Hype 2, up to their current flagship Valhalla. ThieAudio consistently produces great products, and even where they're not necessarily my favorite in a certain bracket, I never have a hard time recommending those to someone who's looking to buy a great IEM. Of everything in ThieAudio's lineup, nothing has been quite as popular as the Monarch series. Starting with the Mark II and then exploding with the Mark III, these were just incredibly popular IEMs with a great tuning, great quality, great features like a modular cable and all of that, that were consistently loved by audiophiles everywhere. So the release of Monarch Mark IV is a pretty big deal. In this video, we're going to take a look at Monarch Mark IV, what it is, how it's different from its predecessors, who is this made for, and should you buy it? ThieAudio offers a pretty wide range of IEM types in their lineup, from all single driver types like Valhalla, hybrids like the Hype series, tribrids like Monarch and Prestige, and even quadbrids like the Origin. Monarch Mark IV uses the same 10 driver setup as Mark III, 2 dynamic drivers, 6 balanced armatures, and 2 electrostatic. And those added 1 additional dynamic over the Mark II, which was a 9 driver. Mark IV is a price increase over Mark III. It costs $1,149 as opposed to the $999 for the base model of the Monarch Mark III. In terms of sound design, the biggest new feature on Mark IV is the tuning switch. Both sides have a switch. It basically goes from like gold to red. Gold is sort of bass boost off, standard tuning. The standard tuning is very close to the Mark III, almost maybe somewhere in between the Mark III and the ThieAudio Prestige LTD in terms of the sound. And flip it on, you get a bass boost, which gives you a little bit more of a V-shaped sense in the sound presentation. Bit more bass emphasis than we've gotten from the Monarch series in the past, but that little bit of Prestige LTD influence brings a more energetic treble too. In terms of the physical visual design of the IEMs, Mark IV is a pretty big change here. Replaces the resin shells of previous models and the sort of swirly-whirly IEM faceplates that we all love with an aluminum shell, aircraft-grade aluminum, mind you, whatever that means. And it has a more of a simple geometric pattern on the main faceplates. Now, if you're really gonna miss those swirly-whirlies, you can get a faceplate that has one of those traditional Monarch designs on it, but that's going to be extra over the standard. The general look and feel of Mark IV is an upgrade, but I think the cable's a bit of a downgrade. Visually, it doesn't really seem to go with the shells aesthetically, and just the look and feel of it is kind of this textured matte finish, along with the hardware. Feels cheaper than the past generation cables. Even the cloth cable that came with Mark II, which had a bit of memory in it, I almost prefer that to the feel of this cable. Now, in terms of the materials inside, I'm not an expert on that, so I don't know, but just in terms of that perceived quality and in terms of the aesthetic matching, I feel like the cable is one weak point here in the physical design of the IEMs. Good news is the cable is still modular. Bad news is, rest in peace, 2.5 millimeter termination. You're only getting the 4.4 and the 3.5 here in the box with Mark IV. So if you've still got a source using a 2.5 millimeter termination, gonna have to go and get an aftermarket cable for this one. So in short, we have an IEM that takes the same basic design of the original, adds a little bit more bite to the upper end, and gives you an option to really boost up the bass for a warmer, harder hitting sound. And it comes with an upgraded build with the aluminum shell. That's an improvement over the previous generation. Probably a little bit more comfortable too, to my fit at least. So who is this one for? Thinking about the sound and design of this one. Now, if Monarch Mark IV didn't have the tuning switches and it just had the sort of stock, I guess, gold tuning, which is the, similar bass to the Mark III, actually maybe slightly less warmth than Mark III, and a little bit more treble extension and air at the top, it would seem like a refinement of the Monarch series. It went a little bit more technical, the stronger definition than Mark III, and just a more refined sound, a little bit more of a reference sound to it. And that would be a cool evolution of the design. Now, if it didn't have the switches and it was just the red tuning, the bass boost, it would still seem like a really cool evolution of the Monarch series. Just rather than going more technical, went a little bit more hard-hitting, aggressive to the sound with the upper end, with that low power, more sub-bass rumble and more bass impact than Monarch Mark III. As it stands, you get both. A cleaner, airier Monarch with more detail and precision, and a bolder, brasher, harder hitting Monarch. Putting that all together, Monarch Mark IV really kind of feels like the ultimate generalist sort of IEM. You want the bass head sound? You've got that. With, again, a bass head with a little bit of a V because it still has that extra treble bite. You want a cleaner, more refined sound? You've got that as well. It just makes for a perfect daily driver, because if you want to get that extra precision, maybe you're listening to an album, classical, folk, something else that doesn't play well with extra bass, turn those switches off, go with the gold tuning. It's gonna sound great. If you're listening to rock, hip hop, electronic, whatever else you've got on there, switches on, and now you've got that hard-hitting bass, that little bit of extra warmth in there, and you're gonna get a great experience with that too. Probably my one caution in the sound, if you are very treble sensitive, this one's probably not for you. That has been a complaint in past versions of the Monarch and some of ThieAudio's other tunings, that they're just a little bit too bright in the treble, and this one is brighter than previous versions of Monarch. So if you heard Monarch Mark III and you thought this is too bright, Mark IV is definitely going to be too bright. Now, if you thought, I like the treble, but I could use more bass, that's going to be more for you. It's that bit of brightness at the top, if that bothers you, that extra extension, kind of, 16, 17, 18K range, that's where maybe this isn't actually for you, in spite of all of the good qualities of the IEM. Which leads us to the question then, should you buy it? When I was thinking about comparisons here, to be honest, nothing really felt like the right comparison other than Mark IV's predecessor, the Monarch Mark III, and another ThieAudio IEM I mentioned, the Prestige LTD, which really feels like Mark IV got a little bit of that injection of the LTD into the MK3 to make that sort of stock gold sound. Now, with Mark III and Mark IV side by side, Mark III is a touch warmer, but also not as bright. There is just a little bit more in that lower mid-range in Mark III, which you do notice in the presentation of something like male vocals. And this is talking about with the switches off, the gold tuning. You don't get that same sort of warmth and strength in the presentation there with the switch off in Mark IV as you did in Mark III. Along with that, we already talked about that treble extension. It's gonna be a love it or hate it sort of thing. If you want that extra bit of air, a little bit more bite and energy in the treble, Mark IV is gonna give that to you. So you get a really similar sound just with that extra bit of treble in the Mark IV gold tuning. You flip the switches for the red bass boosted sound, and now you get something else entirely, which again is more V-shaped. Bigger bass emphasis. It does bring in some of that warmth, which I think improves the vocal presentation, but it's also gonna be significantly bassier over Mark III. So I personally love Mark IV. I think that, the red switches on, I prefer over Mark III for most music. I can see where Mark III is kind of in this sweet spot in between, just a little bit warmer and less bright than the gold mode on Mark IV, and not as bold and brash and bassy as Mark IV with the switches on. So I think there is a group out there, if you've already got a Mark III and you're happy with it and you don't really want more bass or treble added in there, you might just want to stick with Mark III. And at the same time, if you've held off on Mark III, it might still be the right one for you, even though Mark IV is out there. Now, on that faster, more technical and precise end, you have Prestige LTD. And for that one thing, a well-balanced IEM that handles that speed and precision really well. The shift, so the Prestige LTD has only one dynamic driver in the bass, and I think only 4 balanced armatures, but then 4 electrostatic instead of 2. And Prestige LTD just gives you this speed and precision along with a really nice punch in the bass. It's a little bit more of an edge to it than Mark III. Maybe a little bit more of an edge than Mark IV, but it feels tighter and cleaner to me. I feel like the bass, comparing it to Mark IV gold switches, the bass does have a little bit more punch and a little bit more texture to it. It does feel like a step up in the detail over Mark IV. But again, when you flip the switches on Mark IV, you get a totally different sound. So if you're looking for that specific, the one sound, that more clean, precise, detailed sound, in that, ThieAudio tuning style, I would actually lean towards Prestige LTD there. So I think Monarch Mark III and Prestige LTD still have a place in this lineup, and there are gonna be a good number of people who prefer that over Mark IV. What I think Mark IV gives you, other than, the option for a more bass boosted Mark III or a slightly more precise technical Mark III, is that sort of all-encompassing daily driver that's going to give you both ends of the spectrum. If you want a single IEM that really can do it all, that's going to give you that rumbling sub bass with modern hip hop, it's going to give you your warm presentation of bass in classic rock, but it's also going to give you, tight, precise separation with classical music, film scores, and it has really solid vocal presentation across the board. Again, a little bit better with a switch on for that added warmth. I just see Monarch Mark IV as one that can do everything from one end of the spectrum to the other. And that's what really makes it stand out here, where there are still some elements of Mark III that a lot of people are going to like, and some elements of an IEM like Prestige LTD that might be a little bit better. I think Mark IV's ability to do it all is really unique. And like I said, personally, I prefer the Mark IV red switches on over any previous generation of Monarch. So let us know what you think. Do you love switches, hate switches, love treble, hate treble? Love bass, hate bass. You probably don't hate bass. Nobody really hates bass. Let's be real. Let us know in the comments. Of course, be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll be back soon with more high fidelity audio content.